And good morning. How are you today? This is Steve-O Sees. Uh, every morning at 11 a.m. Central Time, this live will come up in your feed. And we are talking about all things spiritual, esoteric, metaphysical here on this channel. And this live is, in general, we use the framework of A Course in Miracles to discuss these topics as sort of a platform and a jumping off point to discuss our spirituality and the way we think and our thinking processes, and therefore our perception of the world and how we vibrate in the world, present ourselves in the world, interact with the world. This morning, I would like to start as people come into the room and get comfortable with what we're doing here. Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Hello, just joined Anthony, Jenny, Virginia, Dana Kraus. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. Anybody who stops by in the room, of course, you can tap the screen and you can please put some likes up there. Also, they have been promoting behind the scenes with these lives for people to give gifts. So if you're so inclined, you can give roses and diamonds and those sorts of things. Every so often, somebody will do that for me. I'm not entirely sure what's happening there. I know I've given some people some diamonds or roses or something on some of their lives, and I think you could give 2 or 3 cents at a time, or a nickel or something like that, which is interesting. But if you'd like to do that, if you'd like to participate, if you'd like to support this channel and this live, feel free to do that. It is appreciated. So today, before I started, I want to spend a few minutes right at the top talking about the law of correspondence. So we're going through the Course in Miracles, and the last couple lessons have been about above all else, I want to see, and above all else, I want to see things differently. Okay, so the idea is that the ego and the conditioned mind is looking at the world in a certain way. And it doesn't say it in the Course in Miracles, but I would say we're looking at the world culturally and from a Western perspective, maybe from a patriarchal perspective, from the perspective of the United States, all these types of things. In any case, the mind has been conditioned to think a certain way. And the last couple of days, we have been affirming and using as an affirmation and a mantra the idea that I would like to see things differently. I would like to change the nature of my consciousness, and therefore, by changing the inside, the nature of my consciousness, my thoughts and my beliefs, the outside will begin to change, of course, which everybody understands from a lot of the spiritual teachings that we are all familiar with. Change the inside, the outside changes. So yesterday we said, above all else, I want to see things differently. And today we are saying lesson 29, that God is in everything that I see. And I just wanted to start by sharing with you guys this, what I was just doing, because I turned on very briefly the Senate confirmation hearings for Robert Kennedy Jr. for HHS secretary. And of course, to say I want to see things differently. Above all else, I want to see things differently. and that God is in everything I see is really, I think, it challenges my spiritual position and my spiritual perspective, of course, because when I start watching these things and, I start seeing the political tactics that are used and the political responses that are given, it's just absolutely amazing to me. That is a point where I can find and I can see how far and how deeply I've moved into my spiritual practice. Now, I want to see things differently. It's absolutely amazing to me, for instance, that Robert Kennedy Jr., people are attacking a Kennedy, right? So you think about the history of this country, the political history of this country, the assassination of a president, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the assassination of his brother Robert, the assassination of MLK, the assassination of Malcolm X, and many other people in the 60s. And it's absolutely amazing to me that by working with Course in Miracles, by practicing the workbook, by practicing the lessons for many years, it's true what the Course in Miracles says. Excuse me, I will begin to see things differently. And the one other thing I want to add to this discussion this morning is another source of my spiritual study, and the study that we can all share is the Kabbalion, very small book. It's called the Kabbalion, Kybalion, and it's a book, says it's written by the 3 initiates, but the Kabbalion outlines the 7 Hermetic principles of the universe, and it talks about Hermetic philosophy. But it does, of course, go hand in hand with Course in Miracles. And I wanted to talk about the principle of correspondence very briefly. There are 7 Hermetic principles outlined in the Kabbalion. The first is that, of course, the universe is mental. The first law of Hermeticism, first principle of Hermeticism, is the principle of mentalism. And it is summed up with the saying that the all is mind and the universe is mental. The second principle is called the principle of correspondence, which is what I want to talk about very briefly right here before we get into the Course in Miracles. The principle of correspondence says, as above, so below, as below, so above. Often you can hear this said, as within, so without, as without, so within. And I just want to hold this in consciousness, hold a space for this as part of the discussion today, because I want to make the point that A Course in Miracles talks about what is my thoughts and beliefs within me are reflected outside of me. So what can I glean? What can I learn about myself, for instance, if I am watching Senate confirmation hearings this week and I see the actual political war that's going on in Washington? And also, if I even think about the way Washington, D.C. in general kind of puts itself, that Washington, D.C. is this whole different entity that seems to operate in its own bubble and seems to operate in its own world by looking at those things and applying the law of correspondence as part of a spiritual program and as part of a spiritual practice. What can I learn about myself? Well, just in a general sense, for instance, as one example is the idea of change. So we've just gone through an election and we're watching the change in power, the handing over of political power to another party. So first of all, we're presented with this idea of two of these split parties that are in conflict. And the idea I'd like to point out about the principle of correspondence is that is exactly what the Course in Miracles says is going on in my mind. My mind is split, right? So just as an exercise, and as the Course in Miracles points out, there is a part of my mind that will resist change. There is a part of my mind that will not want to hand over power. And the way the Course explains it is that my ego mind, the mind of separation, and the mind that identifies with the body, does not want to hand control over to the higher mind, to the mind of spirit, to the Holy Spirit. So the Course in Miracles sets that up by saying there's a conflict in my mind. My mind is conflicted. And so I have to admit that in order to make progress, in order to come to a higher consciousness and a deeper understanding, I have to understand that there's something within my own consciousness that is resisting that. And it's very clearly, you can see it in Senate confirmation hearings, right? They go back and forth across the dais, first one side, then that side. When they go on this side, it's like, yes, okay, we like you. You go on this side, and it's like, we don't like you. we think you're up to no good, right? And it shows the split. But all I'm saying is by using the law of correspondence from the Kabbalion and as a Hermetic principle, the law of correspondence says what I see outside of me is what's going on inside of me. So, what kind of spiritual strength is available to be able to say what I see, what's going on the television today or on my screen in Washington, D.C., is actually something that's going on inside of me. And not only specifically or individually, but it's going on collectively. So I just want to start with that, right? Because the last 2 days and today, with the workbook, with the Course in Miracles, I'm saying to myself, above all else, I want to see differently. Above all else, I want to see things differently. And today we're saying God is in everything I see. So go take a look at those Senate confirmation hearings and then tell yourself God is in that, right? And you can kind of see the distance, the mental distance, the distance that has to be traveled, the gap, as it's called, in my consciousness. In A Course in Miracles, it says there's a gap in your thinking. Just think of that gap. If I watch Senate confirmation hearings or anything coming out of Washington, D.C., and then I say, God is in that. So just something to think about. Thank you for your patience. Let's get into Course in Miracles. Thank you for indulging me in that little spiritual rant. God is in everything I see. It says here the idea for today explains why you can see all purpose in everything. It explains why nothing is separate by itself or in itself. And it explains why nothing you see means anything. In fact, it explains every idea we have used thus far and all subsequent ones as well. Today's idea is the whole basis for vision. God is in everything I see is the whole basis for vision. Continuing, you will probably find this idea very difficult to grasp at this point. You may find it silly, irreverent, senseless, funny, and even objectionable. Certainly, God is not in a table, for example, as you see it. Yet, we emphasized yesterday that a table shares the purpose of the universe. And what shares the purpose of the universe shares the purpose of its creator. Okay, that's a huge idea right there. And of course, as it says, you may find it silly, irreverent, senseless, funny, even objectionable. All those adjectives allow the ego to tell me, forget about it. Just pass over it. Don't worry about it. Keep scrolling, whatever, God is in everything I see. God is in this table. God is in this sweatshirt. God is in this hoodie. God is in this microphone. God is in this mobile device. Right? It seems, Try then today to begin to learn how to look on all things with love, appreciation, and open-mindedness. You do not see them now. Would you know what is in them? Nothing is as it appears to you. Its holy purpose stands beyond your little range. When vision has shown you the holiness that lights up the world, you will understand today's idea perfectly, and you will not understand how you could ever have found it difficult. Right? So it's saying when vision comes around, when I actually begin to penetrate beyond the surface of things, I might begin to see light around objects, or I might actually begin to see that objects in this room, objects around me are actually filled with light. Okay. Our 6 2-minute practice periods for today should follow a now familiar pattern. Begin with repeating the idea to yourself, then apply it to randomly chosen subjects about you, naming each one specifically. Your list of subjects should be as free of self-selection as possible. For example, a suitable list might include God is in this coat hanger, God is in this magazine, God is in this finger, God is in this lamp, God is in that body, God is in that door. In addition to the assigned practice periods, 6 times today for 2 minutes, repeat the idea for today at least once an hour, looking slowly about you as you say the words unhurriedly to yourself. At least once or twice, you should experience a sense of restfulness as you do this. Okay? We have been told throughout the workbook that the idea is to practice these mantras, practice these lessons, practice these thoughts without criticizing them, without judging them. The application of these thoughts is the practice that will let these thoughts begin to make sense to me. So the idea is to try to discipline the mind, as it says in the workbook. Currently, my mind is undisciplined. I have to admit that to myself. I'm easily distracted. I cannot think clearly about things. My mind has been conditioned. I am brainwashed to think a certain way. And the Course is trying to get at the root of that so I can release my grip on my perceptions and my thoughts mentally, so that I can release the grip so that they can be replaced with the thoughts of God, so that they can be replaced with loving, peaceful thoughts, so that I can vibrate in a loving and peaceful manner, and that I can extend love and peace in the world. And this is the ultimate purpose of life on this planet, as Course in Miracles reminds us. The ultimate purpose for life on this planet is not to get a good job, not to get a bigger car, not to have a perfect relationship, not to have a fat bank account or a nice retirement or health coverage. Actually, the purpose of life on this planet is to remember who and what I am, to remember through conscious devotion, through a disciplined mind practice, that I am one with God, that I am a son of God, that we are all children of God. So it completely turns all our values upside down. Okay, it actually says that in A Course in Miracles repeatedly. The world as I see it right now is upside down. The world as I perceive it, as I think of it, is completely reversed from its true purpose, from its true meaning. And my perception, likewise, is completely upside down and backwards in relation to what my true perception could be, might be, should be, and is. So we go to a portion of the text that corresponds to the lesson for today, and we're going to call that Chapter 4, Section 5, and it's called the Ego-Body Illusion. In a general sense, what is being said is that the ego and the body do not really exist because they pass away, because they are not eternal, they are not real. That we created the body, we created the ego separate from God, and that God does not want to then destroy the ego or the body, but God, through the grace of the Holy Spirit, wants to take what we have made and sanctify it, save it, salvation, purify it, raise it up higher. So it says all things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. Okay? All things work together for good. That's a tough one. Right? To the ego. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. The ego exerts maximal vigilance about what it permits into awareness, and this is not the way a balanced mind holds together. The ego is thrown further off balance because it keeps its primary motivation from your awareness and raises control rather than sanity to predominance. Okay? I'm a control freak because I am doing things based on my ego thoughts, based on what's in it for me. I want to control situations. I want to control people. I want to control things, right? The ego has every reason to do this according to the thought system which gave rise to it and which it serves. So this is about two different thought systems. The thought system of the ego, which is based on separation, or the thought system of God, or the Holy Spirit, which is based on unity consciousness, Advaita, right? One mind, a universal hologram, of a universal fractal. I am a thought, you are thought in the mind of God. I am created, you are created in the image and likeness of God, which means you are a thought, you are a thinking being. Everything we see is thought that has become coalesced, vibration that reduces itself to matter, a thought vibration that becomes solidified. The ego has every reason to do this, and that is raise control rather than sanity to predominance. The ego has every reason to do this according to the thought system which gave rise to it and which it serves. Sane judgment would inevitably judge against the ego and must be obliterated by the ego in the interest of its self-preservation. A major source of the ego's off-balance state is its lack of discrimination between the body and the thoughts of God. Thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. The ego, therefore, either distorts them or refuses to accept them. Okay, now, the law of correspondence. Just take that second paragraph from the text today. The ego clearly points to the thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. Okay, the ego therefore either distorts them or refuses to accept them. And as I said, Philip, thank you, sir, for the likes. I appreciate it. And as I said when we started out this discussion today, because I was watching those Senate confirmation hearings. Thank you, Philip. Yes. Right. When the senators are questioning Kennedy, they're either going to distort or refuse to accept what Robert Kennedy Jr. is saying. If you're on that side of the aisle, right? And so, by the Hermetic law of correspondence, I can see, by watching those Senate confirmation hearings, I can see what the ego does, what my own ego does to myself. Here, the Course in Miracles is saying that the ego distorts my God thoughts. Thoughts that are coming from God are distorted or completely ignored by the ego. Earlier, it said that body impulses are misdirected miracle impulses. Miracle impulses are thoughts from God. The ego distorts them and relates them to the body. So it continues. It cannot, however, make those thoughts cease to be. It therefore tries to conceal not only unacceptable body impulses, but also the thoughts of God, because both are threatening to it. Being concerned primarily with its own preservation in the face of threat, the ego perceives them as the same. By perceiving them as the same, the ego attempts to save itself from being swept away, as it would surely be in the presence of knowledge. Okay? Any thought system that confuses God and the body must be insane. Yet this confusion is essential to the ego, which judges only in terms of threat or non-threat to itself. Again, let's apply the law of correspondence. Confusion is essential to the ego. This is the Machiavellian idea, the political idea of divide and conquer. Create confusion in the political body, create confusion in the masses, and the citizens, the masses, cannot then reform the government. Okay, so that's simply applying the law of correspondence. So we're going from Course in Miracles, we're applying it to Washington, D.C., or political systems in general, or media systems, communication systems. But it's being pointed out right here that it's happening within us. The ego tries to confuse me. There's something within me that seeks to confuse me about the truth. Amazing, isn't it? I find that simply amazing. I find that idea simply amazing. There's actually something inside of me that wishes to keep me confused, that wants me to argue with you, that wants me to claim that you're different, that you are different from me. This is the entire basis of the political system and the cultural system, and the satanic system. The idea is confusion, divide, and conquer. So there's a political correspondence there, is all I'm saying, and it's based on a mental principle. You can see it by applying the law of correspondence, which is a Hermetic principle, which we talked about at the top of this show, at the top of this download, and there it is. I'm skipping a little bit here. What it starts to talk about, and again, you can find this all online if you don't have the book. If you do not have a copy of Course in Miracles, you can find it all online, of course. I've been through this book a few times, as you can see. First red, then blue, there's some yellow in there. There's some underlining with the pen. Every time you read the book, because your consciousness is changing, there'll be more in the book, right? You know that. You already understand that. I'm not telling you anything, by the way, that you don't already know. We're just here to share this moment, share this vibration. You already know what I'm telling you. I already know what you're about to tell me, because it's one mind, one consciousness. So it's talking about the relationship between the ego and the body. You can find this online at ACIM.org. It talks about the ego compromises with the issue of the eternal, just as it does with all issues touching on the real question in any way. Anytime we get close to the truth, the ego is going to try to compromise or confuse or obfuscate the real issue, right? The ego's characteristic busyness with non-essentials is for precisely that purpose. Preoccupations with problems set up to be incapable of solution are favorite ego devices for impeding learning progress. Thanks again, Philip, for continuing to hit that like button. That is awesome. I've got another friend that comes on here every so often, Jonathan Wright. He hits the like button in much the same way. And as you can see, Philip is getting us close to 2,000 likes. That is awesome. And Beth the Sybil has joined us. Hello, Beth the Sybil. Good to see you. So we're right here at the end of the transmission, the end of the download. Preoccupations with problems are set up to be incapable of solution or favorite ego devices for impeding learning progress. But the Holy Spirit will offer a solution, does offer a solution. It says in all these diversionary tactics, however, the one question that is never asked by those who pursue them is what for? This is the question that you must learn to ask in connection with everything. What is the purpose? Which is where we started with the lesson for the day. which is God is in everything I see. God is in that table. God is in these glasses. God is in that mustache. God is in those pine trees. God is in that snow. A little bit easier to conceive of, right, if we're talking about nature, but God is also in this cotton string, for instance. What is the purpose? Everything shares the purpose of the universe. Washington, D.C. shares the purpose of the universe. Right? Whatever it is, it will direct your efforts automatically. When you make a decision of purpose, then you have made a decision about your future effort, a decision that will remain in effect unless you change your mind. So again, decide this day whom you will serve. And once you really decide, you don't go back and you decide for God, then your efforts are directed automatically. The end is assured. The end is contained. The means are contained in the end because we have made a decision for God. So we will stop there for today. Thanks again, Philip, for participating as you did today. Philip, if you go to my profile, if you send me a DM, if you're interested and you want to talk a little bit about the Course in Miracles, if you're familiar with it, or if you would like to come on this live as a guest, let me know. Thank you, Philip. I appreciate the compliment. Let me know if you'd like to participate. And then one day in the near future, we can talk live. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, Philip and Beth and everyone else. That is all for today. Peace and blessings. Don't let what's going on in Washington, D.C. today confuse you. Okay? Everything is here for one purpose. That purpose is God. That purpose is self-realization. That purpose is oneness. Don't let the ego take over. I love you guys. Peace and blessings. And I will talk to you soon.